Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a case that went cold for a staggering 15 years, all while the killer was hiding in plain sight. It's the story of the long, long search for justice for 18-year-old Anita Knutson. So let's just jump right in. We're going to start with a moment that is every parent's absolute worst nightmare. This quote you see here from Anita's father, Gordon. It just captures the start of it all. The moment he discovered his daughter's body and the beginning of a 15-year fight for the truth. To really understand just how big of a tragedy this was, we first have to get to know the person we lost. So, who was Anita Knutson? All right, so Anita was just a freshman at Minot State University, and she was incredibly ambitious. She was working two jobs just to pay for her own way through school. But it wasn't just about her work ethic. People who knew her said she had this amazing sense of humor and a real passion for justice. You know the type, always the one to stick up for the underdog, for anyone getting picked on. And to her family, she was just this incredible daughter and a super protective big sister. Her own sister, Anna's words really say it all. Anita was the kind of person who would go out of her way to befriend anyone who looked like they needed a friend. Just a genuinely kind soul. Okay, so now let's go back to early June of 2007. This is when a weekend of silence, a really unusual silence from Anita, spiraled into an absolute lifetime of grief for her family. So it all started after a totally normal phone call with her mom on Friday. After that, nothing. She just went silent. By Monday, after a whole weekend of unanswered calls, her dad's worry just turned into pure dread. He drives over to her apartment. He sees her car right there. But when he gets to the locked door and starts knocking, there's just no answer. What police found inside was, well, it was baffling. It was deeply disturbing for sure, but also really perplexing. Anita was in her bed. She'd been stabbed multiple times. But here's the weird part. Nothing was stolen, no signs of a break-in, and the killer, they just calmly left the murder weapon, a little pocket knife right there at the foot of the bed. This was personal. A targeted attack for sure. But why? There was no obvious motive at all. And for Anita's parents, this discovery, it wasn't just grief. It was this horrible, haunting guilt. Listen to her mother Sharon's words. It really gets to the heart of that promise every parent makes to their child, a promise she felt she had broken. So, with no clear motive and hardly any clues to go on, the police investigation kicks off. But it almost immediately turned into this frustrating labyrinth of dead ends. Every promising lead just fizzled out. And they looked at everybody. I'm talking a prom date who was described as a little obsessive who'd actually moved into her same apartment complex. There was a guy in a police sketch. Turns out he was just a local jogger who came forward. They even questioned all the maintenance guys who had keys to the building. But one after another, nope. Every single person was cleared. And that was it. With every lead completely exhausted, Anita's case officially went cold. And for her family, that meant years and years of living with this giant, painful question mark hanging over everything. No answers, no justice. So as the years went by, investigators kept hitting the same brick wall. Every lead on an outside suspect just went cold. So eventually, and this is the key, their focus started to shift. It turned inward, to the one person who was literally living under the same roof. And that led them to ask a really chilling question. What if the killer wasn't some stranger? What if they were already inside? And that's when the police started to take a much, much closer look at Anita's roommate, another student named Nicole Rice. Now, at first glance, Nicole seemed totally in the clear. She had what looked like a rock-solid alibi from her parents, said she was at their house the whole weekend. But the reality was that her relationship with Anita was toxic. It was full of escalating fights, threatening text messages. And get this, Anita had actually told her parents that she was scared for her life, scared of her own roommate. And this wasn't just behind closed doors. This hostility was out in the open. Another student was actually at their apartment and overheard Nicole say this to Anita, a direct, chilling threat right before she was killed. So yeah, the conflict wasn't just real, it was boiling over. Okay, so this brings us to the breakthrough. Let's look at how this whole web of lies, so carefully built, finally started to come crashing down after more than a decade of silence. 15 years. Just think about that. For 15 long, agonizing years, Anita's family waited and wondered. And all that time, the truth was right there, hiding just one room away. So, how did it happen? Well, cold case detectives decided to give the whole thing a fresh look with new eyes, and things started to click. That cut window screen, they realized it was staged, a total red herring. Nicole's text message to Anita's phone after she was already gone, a clumsy attempt to create a fake timeline. But the real nail in the coffin was a witness who finally came forward about a party years before where they heard a drunk Nicole confess to the whole thing. And with that, in March of 2022, she was finally arrested. But an arrest isn't where this story ends, because the impact of this crime, it was like a shockwave. And here's what's so important to remember. The devastation spread far beyond just one person. Just 6 years after his sister's murder, Anita's brother Daniel, they were super close. He just couldn't cope anymore. The grief, the not knowing, it was too much. And he took his own life. So you see, this crime didn't just take one life from the Knutson family. In the end, it took 2. The story of Anita Knudsen is it's a tragic, powerful reminder of a terrifying truth. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How often is the real danger not some monster lurking in the dark, but the person who has the key to the front door, the person living right in the next room?